We just completed a wonderful canoe paddle down the entire length of the Hillsborough River. We went from Hillsborough State Park all the way out to Hillsborough Bay, which is the upper part of Tampa Bay. The length of the trip that we paddled was about 40 miles, and we did it in 5 day trip sections. We were looking at maybe doing it in one shot and camping along the way, but there aren't really a lot of good options along the river to stop and camp. And so we decided to just do it in day trips. So we took our time, we did low mileage each day, and we did it in 5 days, which was great because then we were able to kind of get a better look at certain sections of the river. One of the things that we were really struck by was how much awesome natural beauty there is right in our backyards. We grew up here in Tampa and had never really explored some of these stretches of the river before. So it turned out to be just a fantastic trip because we got to see a lot of things that are right there and we didn't even know were there. On the first day, we actually didn't even bring our canoe. We went up into Green Swamp and did some hiking around because Green Swamp is the source of the Hillsborough River. It's also the source of the Ocklawaha, the Peace River, and the Withlacoochee River. And it's a really important ecosystem. There's a mixture of uplands and swamp up there, and it's a place where the water is able to filter and get cleaned before it flows out into those 4 different rivers. So it's a really important habitat. The upper section of the river, I would kind of, from my experience, split the river up into 3 sections. And I'd say the upper section of the river, which is up in the Hillsborough State Park area, all the way down to about Lettuce Lake Park. Was very wild, very pristine, lots of wildlife, lots of birds, lots of swamp. Lots of floodplain swamp along the river, lots of cypress trees, lots of vegetation, just absolutely spectacular, beautiful. You go through from Hillsborough State Park, you pass a bunch of really great parks that are in the the upper Hillsborough River Wilderness Preserve. You go by Dead River Park, you go by John B. Sargent Park, Morris Bridge Park, Trout Creek Park, and then you leave that preserve, but then you immediately are into Lettuce Lake Park, which is another county preserve type park. So that whole stretch through there was amazing, just absolutely gorgeous. There's one stretch of river through there called the 17 Runs that creates kind of an obstacle because for about 6 miles, I think it is, it's not maintained at all as a canoe trail, so there's a lot of down trees and a lot of obstructions in the way, and you have to pull your boat up and over those sections. On this trip that we just finished, we did not paddle the 17 Runs. However, I paddled the 17 Runs several years ago by myself, so I've done that section before. So on this trip, we just decided that we didn't want to try to put up with that. But we saw lots of alligators. We had a lot of really close calls with alligators in a good way. We saw lots of really beautiful alligators up close. But it was a very high concentration of gators. Lots of different types of wading birds, lots of different types of songbirds this time of year. It was, it's still spring here in Florida, and so lots of songbirds are still out, so you get to hear lots of beautiful songs as we were going along. And also there were lots of birds of prey that we got to see. We heard owls on a regular basis. Didn't see any, but we heard them. Of course, different types of hawks, and even saw a few bald eagles too, which was really cool. Then once you get south or downstream of Lettuce Lake Park, you start to get into more of a developed area. A lot of private land on either side of the river, so you start to see more houses. But surprisingly, from that section, from Lettuce Lake Park down to a park called Riverside Park, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't that highly concentrated, the development, and there was still a lot of vegetative buffer on the riverbank along through that section, which was pretty cool. And so that actually made for a beautiful paddle, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. I was expecting just a solid wall of development and houses and everything, but it was actually a gorgeous section to paddle. And then after you pass Riverside Park and you get down from that, now you're into the reservoir. Now you're into a section that that is backed up by a dam. So there's a dam at Rowlett Park, and from that park upstream to Riverside Park, the river actually becomes a lake. It becomes the reservoir for all of Tampa's drinking water. So as you're going through there, you see lots of changes in the way the banks of the river look. Obviously, the river's a lot wider there. There's basically no current, and you still see a decent amount of wildlife, but you start to see a little bit more pollution in the river. You start to see more garbage in the river because the concentration of development is increasing through there, and also the flow of the water decreases through there. So you get a lot of deposition of different types of runoff and things like that. So we saw a lot of that, unfortunately, but that's what's really going on, so it's good to see it. And then after the dam, you start to see another section of the river, which I consider sort of the lower section of the river, and that starts at a park called Rowlett Park, which is just on the downstream side of the reservoir dam, and we put in there on our final day, and we paddled from there all the way out to the bay. And that section is tidally influenced, meaning that the water comes in and the water goes out, and there's a downstream flow, but only when the tide is ebbing or going out. Otherwise, the water is actually coming in. The water is brackish, so you start to see different types of vegetation. You see different types of invertebrates along the shoreline and along the bottom and stuff like that, because you got a slightly salty river at that point. The currents does obviously change, as I just mentioned. You also start to see the houses start to get a lot closer together as you're going through Temple Terrace and Seminole Heights. You're seeing a lot more dense development. You're seeing more pollution in the water. But I will say this: the upper part of that day, there was a lot of old trees and a lot of old vegetation that had become really big and really established along the riverbank. So it's actually still a really beautiful section to paddle. Then once you get kind of down towards the area just north of downtown, the river widens significantly. You have almost exclusively hardened banks, seawalls, or riprap or type rocks along the side of the river. You're going under lots of bridges, and you're seeing a lot more people, but what was really cool was there was a lot of parks along that stretch. There was a lot of little city parks that I didn't even know existed, so that was kind of cool to see that. And then after that, you start to get it into the area that's like right north of downtown, around the University of Tampa property, and you start to get around by a park called Eulalie, and there's a really fantastic little place there called Waterworks Park, and at Waterworks Park is Eulalie Spring, which is a really neat place that's got a spring which used to be paved over and piped under a parking lot right out into the Hillsborough River, and now they've come back and they've restored that. They've taken the pavement off. They've created a beautiful spring run. They've planted all kinds of wild native vegetation, and it's created a lot of great habitat for fish and birds and turtles and all kinds of other things to restore that little habitat, and then made a really nice park around it too for people to be able to enjoy. So it's a really nice example of a beautiful restoration of a pristine, or what once was a pristine spring, into something that is user-friendly not only for humans but also for wildlife. And that's encouraging to see those kinds of projects. And it's a really great place. There's a restaurant right next door to it. There's a playground adjacent to it as well for kids to play in, with a water park. And it's very popular now, so that's really cool to see people getting interested in wanting to see more of that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll see more restoration of those types of springs and those types of habitats in the future. So yeah, then once you're there, you're pretty much right in downtown. So now it's totally urban. You got skyscrapers coming up on your left-hand side. You got the minarets from University of Tampa, and all those different properties on the right-hand side, and you're paddling right underneath all the bridges right through downtown Tampa, which was kind of a fascinating experience for us. And then we got to where the Jose Gaspar pirate ship normally docks, and that was the completion of our journey. We considered that to be the mouth of the river, and we took out there. Overall, the whole experience was kind of surprising for me. I didn't realize that the river was that diverse. I didn't know hardly anything about the reservoir. I got to learn a little bit more about that. I was pleasantly surprised by how much land is preserved upstream in the upper sections that we paddled. I would say that if you have a place like this near you, or you should look for a place like this near you. Just about everywhere has some place that's a wild natural space that's right in your backyard, even in the city, that you should get out. Go out and explore it. That's the whole reason why we're doing these videos, is to try to help people appreciate natural places and get out and enjoy those natural places, so that they can have a deeper appreciation for what's out there, and so that they will be more likely to act to protect those natural places. So if you liked this video, give it a like, give it a share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel so that you can not miss another video from us. And by doing those things, you actually are helping get these videos out to more people and get more exposure to other people to be able to have an appreciation of natural places. So thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.